Good morning, afternoon, day, or evening to you, wherever you may find yourself. My name is Addison Hamlet, and this is Existential Crisis. Today we discuss a famous work by another great playwright of the Spanish Golden Age, Siglo de Oro, Life is a Dream, by Calderon de la Barca. The many successes of the 17th century female stage writer and poet Mary Pix, and the odd yet fascinating emergence of theater as an event in similitude and synchronicity to its emergence as a building, and how those things feed into one another. There is a story, one rooted in old wisdom, that the whole world today might benefit from witnessing. The story being none other than Pedro Calderon de la Barca's Life is a Dream, which tells the tale of Sigismund, a poor wretch, dejected, rejected, and subjected to the pits of earthly hell. Imprisoned from his birth to the day in which his father, Basilio, king of Poland, finds it in his heart to free his son. His initial actions of incarcerating his child were motivated by the death of his wife and queen, who would often wake from horrid dreams of a son so beastly and evil that he would surely destroy the nation if given the chance to rule, along with destroying her. Sigismund, unaware of why or how he appears to be the site of unluckiness, curses the heavens oft, and when Rosaria, a woman donned in men's clothing, and Clarion, her fittingly named servant, approach, finds and attacks them. It is the beauty of Rosaria that deters Sigismund's monstrous impulses, and he tells the tale of his woe as he knows it. His jailer, Clodido, then arrives with guards to seize the intruders and prisoner, only to realize that Rosaria is his bastard child, who traveled from her Russian homeland to Poland in search of revenge. Torn between defending his honor or hers, Clodido herds the pair to the throne, hoping truth will prevail. In perfect accordance with the king's decision to reinstate Sigismund to the throne, Clodido arrives to beg, promptly showing gratitude when so easily appeased. Then does Rosaria appear as a maiden again, attempting to disguise herself or at least stay relatively hidden from strong scrutiny by Astolfo, the ritter of her honor, and the cousin/quarter of Estrella, the princess, because, royal incest. The story goes that Sigismund is given reign to rule, though swiftly uses his strength and size to abuse his power and people, throwing guards from windows and threatening women's safety. He is put to sleep and dragged back to his cell, where he is convinced that his experience was a dream. To his surprise, the townspeople, having just found out about him, decide to break him out, and in a fury, he goes to overthrow his father. These are the revelations of Sigismund as he heads to the throne.
If you were told this beast will kill you, would you be wise to wake it when it slept? If you were told this sword will be your death, would it be politic to draw it then and there and point it at your heart? If you were told a watery gulf will be your grave, the silver sea your monument, would you do well to put to sea when the proud waves toss their crests of snow and breakers curled in crystal mountains? And yet my father did so! He woke the beast that threatened him. He drew the sword he dreaded, and he braved the ocean storm. But mark you, though my savagery had been a sleeping beast, my fury a tempered sword, my wrath a gentle breeze. Not by rancor and injustice can we stave off doom. They rather do provoke it. But he who would be master of his fate must act with prudence and with moderation. We cannot guard against the harm foreseen until it is upon us, nor counter its effect until it's done. A father kneels before his son. A king is humbled to the dust. This was heaven's sentence. Try as he would, he could not counter it. Then how should I, who am less than he is, in age and worth and wisdom, succeed where he has failed? Rise, Majesty, give me your hand. You try to outwit heaven, and heaven has shown you the error of your ways. My head awaits your vengeance. Humbly, I throw myself at your feet.
Sigismund ends the play with an ode to the title.
You stare amazed. What do you marvel at? That I am tutored by a dream, and live in fear that I may wake again to find myself once more a prisoner? Yet if it were not so, to dream would be enough. For thereby I have learnt to know that all the happiness of man is just a dream, and passes like a dream. And now I seek to make the most of mine, what time it lasts, begging forgiveness for our faults, believing that noble natures are the most forgiving.
So let's dive into the life of our playwright, Pedro Calderon de la Barca. De la Barca was born in Madrid, continuing to live there throughout his later years. He happened to be born on a boat in the Manzanares River, adding the name de la Barca to his last name, whereas he would have just been known as Pedro Calderon. Later in life, he served as a soldier and a Roman Catholic priest. His birth came at the peak of Lope de Vega's influence over Siglo de Oro, and Pedro took it a step further. He began to redefine the work of Vega, and today he is esteemed as the co-creator of Spanish Baroque theater. I believe performing this play at UNCW in the present time period would be incredibly eye-opening to the community about what it means to create your own reality. Many of the people in our world today stay skeptical about prophecies and predictions, but what a lot of us have forgotten is that we are still in belief of the stories we were told about ourselves, or the messages we were given from childhood. Stories like, "You're not good enough," "Nothing in life comes easy," or "You have to be a certain way to be accepted." Sound familiar? I like this story because it has a predictable plot with an unpredictable, realistic, humanizing, and happy ending. It releases us from the bounds of storytelling that imply things are set in stone. Now I want to talk about a very special playwright by the name of Mary Pix. Mary Pix is born in the mid-17th century, 1666. She is the daughter to Roger Griffith, a rector of his age, musician and headmaster of the Royal Latin School in Buckingham, Buckinghamshire. He unfortunately dies when Mary is very young, though she continues to live in the Royal Latin School with her mother even after his death. When smallpox breaks out in Buckingham just a year after a mysterious fire burns down the school, Thomas Dalby, her lover, leaves town without Mary. It is rumored that Mary and Dalby had knocked over a candle while engaging in some passionate alone time, which set the room ablaze. At 18, Mary marries a merchant tailor from Kent, George Pix, and they moved to his hometown to live in his estate. Her first son, named after his father, died at a year old. Immediately after, the couple packs up and moves to London. There they see to another son, William, born in 1691. Her influence in the theater is huge. She is one of the first of her kind, a scandalous female playwright with a craving for romanticism. Mary Pix redefines romance for many of her contemporaries and leverages her sexuality as a narrative device. She is known for her strong female leads, writing for Elizabeth Barry and Anne Bracegirdle, two famous actresses of the Restoration period, and is one of the top female playwrights of her age. Among playwriting, Pix also took to poetry and novel writing. Her notable works include the novel The Humane Cardinal, or Innocence Betrayed, the poem Violenta, or The Rewards of Virtue, turned from Bacchae into verse, and the trophy case of plays, Ibrahim the 13th, Emperor of the Turks, The Spanish Wives, The Innocent Mistress, The Deceiver Deceived, Adventures in Madrid. These last four were anonymous, but assumed to be by her. It is incredible that this mistress began her writing career at age 30 and only wrote until she turned 41. Mary is an admirer and contemporary of Aphra Behn, Susanna St. Liv, Deliver Manley, and Catherine Trotter. Mary does not receive as much credit as her female peers, and it seems that this was the case even when she was alive. You see, just as Mary enjoyed writing about scandal, it followed her in real life. In 1698, she was involved in a plagiarism scandal between her play Deceiver Deceived and the quote-unquote reinvented Imposture Defeated by George Powell. It went something like this. Mary, my dear, this is utter rubbish. You really think so? Absolutely. But you know what they say. One man's trash is another's treasure. What was that, George? I said you should never produce this, so that I may produce it instead. Hold on a minute. Are you copying the script right now? No, darling. I'm merely writing about how dreadful it is so I may post it in the papers and publicly shame you. Oh, yes, of course. Darling, how do you spell that word? Deceitful. D-E-C-E-I-T-F-U-L. I quite enjoy that word. Well, I'm sure you would. Oh, Mary, your wits get you nowhere. Women are much more useful in the kitchen. Enchanté. Class act guy, huh? When Powell's play, Deceiver Deceived, went up at a theater in Little Lincoln's Inn Fields, Mary Pix quite classily moved her original work to the Drury Lane Playhouse in Illinois. In a newspaper ad for the piece, it reads, "Our authoress, like a true woman, shewed her play to some, who, like true wits, stole half away." Not only does Powell deny these claims, but he even goes so far as to say that he was the creator of both plays, and that Pix begged him to make The Deceiver Deceived for notability. Ironic, considering how poorly it was received and how preferred Pix's version was. Today, Mary Pix's works are still being put on by popular theaters such as the RSC, which put up her play The Beau Defeated in 2018, renamed The Fantastic Follies of Mrs. Rich, and undergoing a few scriptural changes for the modern day. As whatsonstage.com states, the play follows Mrs. Rich, a wealthy widow who will do anything to gain a title. They also give a shout out to Mary for putting her name on her play, as many women wrote anonymously, so many plays have been attributed to men, when in reality, it was no such truth. The play, The Female Wits, performed at the Theatre Royal in Drury Lane, was written about Mary Pix, Catherine Trotter, and Deliverer Manley, attacking the women for their playwriting fame. The play is anonymous, boldly, and depicted Pix as stupid but kindly. Well, enough about disrespectful men and talented, underappreciated women. Let's talk about strolling players! Strolling players were just what they sound like. Actors who would travel from town to town with no building, set, or tech, just themselves and whatever props and costumes they had to begin with. This was a time in which the immersion of the theater as a building and the existence of it without any kind of set were emphasized. The Colosseums of Greece and Rome are the first recordable stages of theater, and they were huge. Concrete, cyclical shapes that pointed to the stage at the bottom of the structure. They were open and viewable, though not necessarily in style with what the people of the New Age wanted. Medieval theaters were known for their temporary stages, often within great meeting halls, barns, or open courtyards. Then did the emergence of theaters like the Globe in London become popular. They were open-aired and framed with timber and the audience and gallery opera boxes. Because lighting had not developed to its fullness yet, they were only performed in during the day when the sun was out. It was the architect Inigo Jones, though, that is credited to have designed the proscenium arch, a stage that is only partially visible to the audience, with all sides able to be hidden by curtains or allowing actors to enter and exit without being seen off stage. This changed the game when it comes to quick changes and the familiarity of the theater as more than just an art style or an event, but a place. It also contributed to other forms of performance, such as music and dance, which are intrinsic to theatrical production. So many theaters were later put under construction to raise the seating capacity, while circuses and opera houses quickly became even bigger stages. What sucks, though, is that banishment of theater in England and America and Germany, India, pretty much everywhere except for France, was really popular in the 17th century. Many theaters were straight up demolished, and lots of care, craft, and history went down with them. Only some strolling players were legally allowed to continue their craft, though of course some did it illegally. It is amazing though, because it proves that theater can still exist any and everywhere. Strolling players were incredibly important in the spreading of news, language, culture, trends, history, and most importantly, propaganda. During the bubonic plague, flagellation became quite popular. Because people believed the plague was punishment from God, strolling players would travel from town to town to perform skits that showed people being brutalized with flogs and whips as to inspire people away from sin, and therefore the spreading of the plague. But because their knowledge of how germs spread was so incredibly low, perhaps they didn't recognize that traveling through multiple locations in a short amount of time with many people who all shared the same uncleaned whips wasn't their brightest idea about how to limit the spreading of the Black Death. They were also artists, like in Spain, for example, who would travel late at night for little pay to perform at oddly early or insanely late times of the day and face fear of robbers and thieves. For this reason, they considered having women abroad risky. but this stopped women not. Hooray for women! It was this determination and passion that led the way for what we know today as touring companies and extreme success in the modern theater world. In a weird way, theater still runs into the strolling player archetype. In the 20th century, when experimental theaters became all the rage, using unusual spaces like coffee houses and basements became normal. Stages were built out of cardboard boxes, and black box theater gained validity in the theater community. To this day, actors encounter the same issues and solutions as actors of the past. Because I find strolling players to be amazing pioneers of the theater, I took it upon myself to really consider what it would be like to be a strolling player. I wrote out a list of pros and cons, and I'd say they're pretty even. My pros consist of getting to act, having time with peers, connecting with an audience, traveling to new places, immersing myself in different cultures, telling different stories, finding cute little shops and restaurants. It's good exercise. It sounds rarely boring. A rogue lifestyle in some instances. And to be a founding father of theater, there's no inbound limitations, and it allows for a more personal experience with the audience. My cons consist of constant travel with little rest, probably low pay. Some places and towns are pretty scary to travel through, especially at night, and I really can't imagine what a street or a town would look like without modern day architecture and streetlights, so they'd be even scarier than they are today. The theater family is probably full of drama and always bickering. You never get to stay in one place for very long, and you risk being robbed or attacked. There are tight or unsure sleeping quarters, little privacy, and it's hard to imagine a world without tech, lighting, and behind-the-scenes action, coming off stage to do a quick change or doing my makeup in the dressing room before the curtains open. Limited play history and accessibility. Not having as many plays as we have right now and not having Google. I'm really trying to figure out where they were getting these plays from, and most of them were probably new works or written plays by people in the company, and so you're never really sure what you're going to be doing, especially because a lot of strolling players were attempting to adhere to the trends or the culture. But that could also be really exciting. So I'd say that's a pro and a con. Another pro and a con is possibly getting flogged and possibly getting arrested. What would the world look like without lessons, dreams, modern female playwrights, and sanctum spaces, physical or environmental? While we may not know, if there's one thing we've learned today, it is that someone, somewhere, at some time, certainly did. Whether it be Sigismund in his jail before luxury courted him, Mary before herself and her contemporaries, and the world before performance becomes legitimized, someone essentially walked so that we, here today, could run. I just wanted to remind you all that your consideration, attention, and willingness to dare past the confines of space and time today are so appreciated. As always, my name is Addison Hamlin, and this has been today's episode. of existential crisis. I want to take the time to extend a very warm thank you to Dr. Elizabeth Wellman of the University of North Carolina at Wilmington and the entirety of the Western Theater History 1 class. This semester has been hard, yet well worth it. To learn with such a group is a blessing, and selfishly, I take pride in knowing that I am a part of such amazing talent, and I'm very grateful to be taught and offered such opportunity as this in my classroom settings, but also my profession. So thank you, and bonne journée.